Have you ever? Do you remember a time in covering college basketball in the Toronto area where the ACC was so down? I mean, I think for most, maybe like outside of like 2 weeks of the season, Duke has been the only team in the rankings at all. Um, do you remember a time where the ACC felt this bad? I guess.
Yeah, it's hard. There have been periods of time where it felt like it was Duke and UNC and everybody else. I mean, people forget that the ACC didn't have a Final Four team between 2010 and 2015. That 11, 12, 13, 14. That's the longest title Final Four drought in ACC history. So this is a league that has consistently sent at least one team to the Final Four, and usually it's either Duke or North Carolina. And obviously, part of the problem was in that 11 to 14 period, neither Duke nor Carolina went, and both teams were kind of in sort of weird rebuilding cycles in some ways. And then 15, 16, 17, it changes, and then 19 with Virginia. If you go back to sort of, I mean, you can break it down, and there have been years that have been sort of this bad. But typically you've had two things have happened. One, you've had two or three teams at the top that are Final Four contenders, like Duke and Carolina and Maryland, or Duke and Carolina and Georgia Tech, Duke and Carolina and Virginia. There's a group of teams at the top that are kind of fighting it out to be at the top. There's in the standings there is this year, but I don't think anyone feels like, if Duke and Notre Dame played 10 times on a neutral court, that Notre Dame's going to win 6 of those.
Yeah.
And the other part of it is, and this has been true for the last 3 or 4 years, except for sort of the Jeff Bizdelic era at Wake, we haven't seen the bad teams in the ACC be this bad.
Yeah.
And that drags everybody down. When the worst team in the ACC, whether it's a 12-team league or a 9-team league or a 15-team league, is still in the top 150, which has happened a lot over the years, it kind of holds everybody else up. But what we've seen with over the last really since 2019 and in the sort of the 2020 non-season, 21 this year, teams like Pitt, Boston College. I mean, there were outliers like this, like the BC team where Dennis Clifford, what was your best memory of the season? Going out to eat with the guys, like that famous bad BC team.
Yeah.
But we haven't seen that consistently, or multiple teams like that. And then you throw in, okay, Syracuse, perennial Sweet 16 team, down. Louisville, added to the league despite everything because they were good at basketball, is terrible. Jeff Capel, I'm baffled by it, but he hasn't really been able to get Pitt going. They've never recovered from the Kevin Stallings disaster. Miami's back this year, which is great because those Jim Larinaga teams that competed with, Shane Larkin and all those guys, that was great for the league. Leonard Hamilton has had one of the better, more consistent programs at Florida State the last 10 years. They're down this year.
Yeah.
Georgia Tech wins the ACC title last year, maybe the worst team in the league this year. NC State, 2-time national champion, hasn't won an ACC title since 87, but usually pretty good. They're down this year. I think they'll be okay, but they're down. Team back is great for the league. Clemson's had better teams. It's a combination of a lot of things, and a lot of teams that you depend on to be at least decent, to be NCAA tournament teams, just aren't. I think the league is better when Wake is good, because then you get the whole Big Four going. I think it's better when Notre Dame is good, because I'm a huge Mike Brey fan. I just would ask him his opinion on anything and write a column about it because he's more entertaining than me. I think it's been great the last few years that Leonard Hamilton has had a team. In 2020, that was a Final Four team.
Yeah.
Like, they may not have made it there, but that was Florida State had a Final Four team in 2020. So, we just, you look across the ACC, other than Duke, it's just not there this year. Like, Notre Dame is okay. I think Notre Dame has gotten better. Miami is good. The guards are great. Sam Wardenberg had this running dunk last night against Pittsburgh that was like, you're rewinding it to make sure it really happened. The Hurricanes have some stuff going. And then, North Carolina, maybe the second most talented team in the league, but who knows what you're going to get on any given night. It's hard for a lot of your programs that you count on to be good or very good to suddenly turn out to be good, okay, or bad.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what's happened. And the big question, and I don't have an answer for this, is this cyclical? Will this all resolve itself in 2 years? Or have there been fundamental changes in the game of college basketball, financial changes, recruiting changes, transfer changes, assistant coach departures, things like that? Are there fundamental changes in the world of college basketball that mean this is a trend and not a blip? And I don't have the answer for that, because I don't necessarily see those things happening, other than since the SEC got a lot more money than everybody else, the SEC is suddenly a lot better at basketball.
Yep.
And that to me is the one dynamic that's changed. And you look at guys like Walker Kessler, who are, playing for Auburn instead of UNC this year, little things like that can make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll end on this one. Obviously next Saturday, is Duke Carolina coaches final, Duke Carolina game, coaches final game in Cameron. What do you expect that scene to be like?
The only thing that I can compare it to in my experience would be the 2019 Zion UNC game, with Obama there, and the tickets for $10,000, and Obama saying his shoe broke. One of my favorite moments. That this will obviously eclipse that, and I think we got a sense of that, what it's going to be like just at the Wake game. Like, there were like 22 former players there. Trey and Tyus Jones were there. Guys that we haven't seen a lot in Cameron. Some of them because they're playing in the league, but it was just it was you got the sense of something building. Here's my question for you. I think it's gonna be insane is my answer. I don't know that we'll have seen anything like it, and the pressure that team will face to not screw up against a UNC team that can be very explosive. Like, if Caleb Love hits his first 4 shots, look out. Like, then they're in it. Like, the pressure on that team. Like, I honestly think the ACC and NCAA tournament will be easier than this game because of the pressure to not screw this up. But let me ask you this question. This is the question I've been pondering and asking people about. If they win, especially if they win on like a last second shot, do you think the Crazies will storm the floor?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know, was Wojo's team the last court storm we've had?
I think so.
That's a good question. I mean, obviously, typically I'd say no. We don't ever storm the court. And I don't. I mean, the side note. I guess I'm the old guy yelling at clouds, but I don't like court storming.
Let's circle back to that in a second. But
they could, I guess.
I feel like the students are going to have to distinguish themselves in some way to show that the Crazies have met the challenge of this moment. Yeah. And now there's definitely a
non-zero chance.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. There's a non-zero chance. Like, I think it could happen. Now, if it's a 20-point game,
then maybe not.
Yeah, but they had a big FS Who like TIFO banner that they unveiled during the FSU game. I guess I said Wake. It was I get FSU game. Maybe they're gonna have. Maybe that was a test for a lot of sort of banners and things that they'll roll out during the game. I think that would kind of check that box. But I'm fascinated. I talked to a guy who does sort of arena security as a job, and I was like, "What?" And has spent a lot of time in Duke over the years. I said, "What do you think? Are you planning for that? Like, would you be planning for that?" And he was kind of like, I mean, I think we have to plan for it.
Yeah.
So I don't even know what that would look like. As you know, there's basically the corners and then 2 notches in the scorer's table, kind of at the, between the free throw line and midcourt. I don't know that you can funnel all those people through those spaces without them stomping on press row.
Right. Yeah. Press row.
If they come over the top, I'm standing my ground. I just put that out there now.
Yeah, press row would definitely get killed. I mean, and that's the other, like, is there such thing as like a polite court storming? You know what I mean? Like, where they're like, oh, excuse me, let me slide by.
Where you see it, and they do a really good job with it, is NC State.
Really?
You look at, like, you remember the NC State game where they beat Duke and the kid in the wheelchair got tipped over and then rescued by CJ Leslie. I can't remember his name. It's going to kill me. He's going to kill me if he watches this. Will got tipped out of his wheelchair. CJ Leslie rescues him from the storm. if you watch it very closely, all of the state fans come in from the corners. That the security steered them when they saw it was coming onto the court from the corners, and it was a very orderly, disorderly conduct. So I think there are ways to do it. I just don't know that Cameron specifically is set up to do that without people getting killed, because the grad students are going to trample the rich alumni.
They're going to go straight through.
And the undergrads are just going to come right over press row. And I don't know if you've ever sat in those chairs, but when you sit in them as a media member, there's a student on your back and your chest and belly is pressed up against the counter. So if there's ever a panic or a, like a crush thing where let's say there's a fight and everyone backs away, we're all going to die. The whole media will just be cut in half. So I wouldn't say I'm concerned about a court storm. I think if we see it coming, we'll be able to brace ourselves and prepare and defend ourselves. But I'm fascinated whether it will happen. And I'll tell you, the worst court storming I was ever in as a journalist, I was a student, and it was at Dartmouth.
Really?
Yeah. The 50 people in the building stormed the court after breaking Penn's 40-something game. I think it was 42 game Ivy winning streak. And they did not care. Like those 50 kids were coming on the court no matter what. And one of them stepped right on my laptop.
Oh no.
So, I mean, it was fine. It was the school paper's laptop. I was 19 years old. I was defend myself, but that was, there's no security because it's Dartmouth and there's, 500 people in the building. But that's the only one where I've ever actually felt threatened for my safety. The ones at state have been fine. Like they do a really good job of funneling them into those corners and getting them on the court, and it's fine.